Stop. I'll buy her. Caspian Wraith's voice cut through the dusty afternoon air like a whip crack, halting the auctioneer mid-sentence. Every head in Millbrook's town square turned toward the scarred stranger who'd just offered $300 for a girl nobody else would bid 20 on. The auctioneer's gavel froze midair. Sir, she's got the devil's mark on her. Ain't nobody wants, I said. I'll buy her. Caspian's steel-gray eyes never left the girl chained to the auction block. Beneath the grime and torn dress, he could see it clear as day, an intricate raven tattoo spiraling down her left shoulder. The same tattoo he'd watched being inked by candlelight in a Confederate medical tent 7 years ago, when a mysterious girl had saved his life by switching his death sentence papers with those of a dead prisoner. The girl Serafina learned. Her name later from whispered camp? Gossip looked different now. Thinner, wilder, with eyes that held storms instead of the gentle compassion he remembered. But that tattoo was unmistakable. She'd vanished the night after saving him, leaving behind only questions and a debt he'd never been able to repay. 300 going once? The auctioneer's voice cracked with disbelief. Seraphine's head snapped up, her amber eyes locking with Caspian's across the crowd. Recognition flickered there, followed immediately by something that might have been terror. She yanked against her chains, sudden and violent, like a wild animal sensing a trap, going twice. The crowd murmured uneasily. Serafina was local legend found 3 months ago, unconscious in the ruins of the old Whitmore plantation. Speaking in tongues and bearing that unholy tattoo, some said she was cursed. Others claimed she could speak to the dead. All agreed she was trouble, sold to the gentleman in the gray coat. Caspian stepped forward, his boots echoing against the wooden platform. He'd spent 7 years searching for her, following rumors and ghost stories across 3 states. Now she was here, chained like a common criminal, and every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Mr. the Sheriff approached cautiously. You sure about this? Girl's been nothing but trouble since she got here. Won't say where she's from, won't give her real name. Keeps talking about things that ain't happened yet, I'm sure. Ah! Caspian counted out the bills with steady hands, though his heart hammered against his ribs. Release her to me. As the sheriff unlocked her chains, Seraphine's eyes never left Caspian's face. When the metal fell away, she rubbed her wrists slowly like she was testing whether this was real. I know you, she said finally, her voice hoarse. From disuse? You're the soldier. It's the one who was supposed to die. And you're the angel who made sure I didn't. Caspian extended his hand. Serafina. She stared at his outstretched palm for a long moment. That's not my name anymore. Nothing about me is the same anymore. Her fingers trembled as she reached toward him. Shouldn't have come for me, Caspian Wraith. You don't know what I've become. The moment their skin touched, Serafina gasped and jerked backward as if burned. Oh God, she whispered, her eyes wide with fresh horror. I can see it. I can see what's going to happen to you because of me. What do you see? Caspian's voice remained steady, despite the ice forming in his veins. Serafina backed away from him, shaking her head violently. Fire. So much fire. And, screaming, her amber eyes had gone distant, unfocused. Come for us both. The Covenant will. She stopped abruptly, pressing both hands to her temples. The Covenant? Caspian stepped closer, ignoring her retreat. Serafina, what happened to you after that night? Where did you go? I told you that name is dead. She whirled on him, and for a moment her eyes flashed with an otherworldly light. They called me Nyx when they ... when they changed me. The crowd had begun to disperse, but several lingered. Drawn by the strange electricity crackling between the scarred soldier and the tattooed girl, Mrs. Hartwell. The town gossip clutched her shawl tighter and whispered to her companion about devil worship and unholy unions. Caspian moved with deliberate calm, approaching Nyx he'd honor her chosen name like he would a spooked horse. Then tell me what they did to you. Help me understand. You can't understand. Her laugh was bitter, broken. You think you're rescuing some sweet girl from your memories, but she died the night I saved you. What's left is something else entirely. Show me. The simple command hung in the air between them. Nyx's eyes widened, searching his face for any hint of the fear or revulsion she'd grown accustomed to seeing. You really want to know? Fine. She reached for the torn neckline of her dress and pulled it aside, revealing more of the raven tattoo. But as Caspian watched, the ink seemed to move, shifting and writhing beneath her skin like living shadow. This isn't just decoration anymore. It's alive. And it shows me things. Terrible things. Several onlookers gasped and made the sign of the cross. One woman fainted outright. After I left camp, I tried to go home to my family's farm in Georgia. Nix continued, her voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting a nightmare. But the Covenant found me first. They said my bloodline was special, that my grandmother had been one of their seers before she fled north. They said I had a gift that needed to be awakened. She touched the tattoo, and Caspian could swear he saw actual ravens take flight beneath her skin. They did things to me. Rituals. Blood magic. They bound this thing to my soul and taught me to read the threads of fate. But the visions, ... double quotes, she shuddered. The visions nearly drove me mad. That's why you were in the plantation ruins, Caspian. Realized you were running from them. I was dying from them. Nix's smile was sharp as broken glass. The visions were getting stronger, more frequent. I couldn't tell past from future, dream from reality. So I went to the one place I knew. They wouldn't follow cursed ground. The Whitmore place has been soaked in so much blood and misery that it scrambles supernatural senses. I thought I could find peace there. Instead, you found more trouble. Story of my life. She looked at him with something that might have been affection, if it weren't so tinged with desperation. The moment you spoke my old name, you bound yourself to my fate. I can see the threads connecting us, red as fresh blood. Caspian reached for her hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. The contact sent a shock through both of them, not painful but intense, like lightning seeking ground. Then we face whatever comes together, he said simply. Nick stared at their joined hands, watching invisible threads of destiny weave themselves tighter. You still don't understand. Covenant won't just kill you, Caspian. They'll make you watch while they turn me into something monstrous. And then they'll use that thing wearing my face to destroy everything you've ever cared about. Let them try. Script tightened protectively. I didn't spend 7 years hunting for you just to lose you to some devil-worshipping cult. For the first time since he'd found her, Nix smiled, really smiled, not the bitter twist of lips she'd been offering. You always were too stubborn. For your own good, soldier, you always were worth the trouble, Angel. The moment was shattered by the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast. Nix went rigid, her free hand flying to her tattoo. They're here, she whispered. 5 riders thundered into Millbrook's town square. Act! Their black horses lathered with sweat and foam. The leader wore a long coat that seemed to swallow light, and when he dismounted, the temperature around them dropped, 10 degrees. Brother Morrigan, Nix breathed, and Caspian felt her begin to shake. The man was tall and gaunt, prematurely white hair and eyes like chips of winter ice. When he smiled, his teeth seemed too sharp, too many. Oh. Raven, you've led us quite a chase. The remaining townspeople scattered like leaves before a storm, abandoning the square to whatever unholy business was about to unfold. Only the sheriff remained, his hand hovering over his gun, though he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Jeez. Not going back with you, Caspian said, stepping protectively in front of Nix. Morrigan's laugh was the sound of wind through graveyards. And who might you be to interfere with Covenant business? Someone who doesn't give a damn about your Covenant. Ah, but you should. Morgan tilted his head like a curious predator, especially since our little seer here has been showing us such interesting visions of your future. Tell me, soldier, do you dream of fire? Caspian felt Nix stiffen behind. Whatever she showed you was against her will, but that's where you're wrong. Morrigan's smile widened impossibly. Dear Nix has been sending us her visions quite willingly, haven't you, child? Every nightmare, every prophetic dream, every glimpse of what's to come. The tattoo ensures she has no choice in the matter. You're lying, Nix said, but her voice cracked with uncertainty. Am I? Then tell me. Little Raven, why do you think we found you so easily? Why do you think we knew exactly where to look? Morgan began walking toward them, his boots making. No sound on the wooden platform. The binding works both ways. Every vision you experience gets shared with us, including the ones about him. He gestured at Caspian with one pale finger. Did you know he's going to father the child that destroys us? Or that he's destined to unite the scattered resistance against our order? Such fascinating potential futures. Nix stumbled backward as if struck. No. I would have felt it if... What? If we were using you as an unwitting spy against the one person you care about? Morgan's laughter grew colder. Oh, my dear girl, you felt it every time. You just thought it was guilt. Caspian saw the exact moment Nix's world shattered. Her amber eyes went wide with horror, and she pressed both hands to the raven tattoo, as if she could tear it from her skin. Every vision, she whispered. Every dream about him, about us, about what could be, you saw it all. Every last one, Morgan confirmed, including the rather intimate ones. Really, Nix? Such passion for a man you barely know? Rage blazed through Caspian like wildfire. He lunged for Morgan, but the other man was faster, humanly fast. One pale hand caught Caspian's throat and lifted him off his feet. Now. Violence won't solve anything. Morgan's grip tightened. Though I must say, you're even more impressive in person than in the visions. I can see why our little raven became so attached. Let him go. Nix's voice cracked with power, and the raven tattoo flared with dark light. Several windows around the square suddenly spider-webbed with cracks. There's the fire we've been cultivating, Morgan said approvingly. But you're not strong enough yet, child. Not without proper guidance. He released Caspian, who fell too, his knees gasping. Come home with us willingly, and we'll let your soldier live. For now, and if I refuse, Morgan nodded to his companions. They dismounted in perfect synchronization, revealing faces that were subtly wronged, too pale, too sharp to knowing.
Oh.
Then we take you both. But I promise you won't enjoy watching what we do to him first. Nix looked down at Caspian, who was struggling to his feet with murder in his gray eyes. She could see the threads of fate spinning around them, showing her a dozen different futures. In most of them, he died. On all of them, she became something monstrous. But there was one thread, thin as spider silk and fragile as morning frost, that showed something different, something impossible. There's a third option, she said quietly. Morgan raised an eyebrow. Oh. Nix reached for Caspian's hand and pulled him to his feet. When their skin touched, power crackled between them, not just her dark gift, but something new, something that belonged to both of them. We fight. My dear child, Morgan said with false pity, you can barely control your abilities as they are. What makes you think his words were cut off as Nix and Caspian moved together? Their combined will focusing through the mystical connection they'd just discovered. The raven tattoo blazed with silver fire instead of shadow, and Morgan stumbled. Backward as if struck. Impossible, he breathed. The binding can't be. No one has ever loved her enough to share the burden, Caspian said grimly. His hand steady in Nix's, despite the power coursing through them both. For the first time since entering Millbrook, Morgan looked uncertain, the silver fire spreading. From Nix's tattoo began to take shape not ravens this time, but phoenixes, their wings spanning impossible distances as they soared around the square. Where their light touched, the oppressive cold that had followed Morgan began to lift. The binding is breaking, one of Morgan's companions hissed, his two sharp features twisting with alarm. How is this possible? Lovnik said, her voice stronger now, clearer, something your covenant never understood. When two souls choose each other freely, completely, the connection transcends any blood magic you could devise. Morgan snarled, showing those unnatural teeth. Romantic nonsense. Power is power, and ours has been refined over centuries. He raised his hands, and shadows began pouring from his fingertips like thick oil. You're still just one girl with a half-trained gift, but I'm not alone anymore. Caspian stepped forward, and somehow impossibly silver flames began wreathing around his hands as well. The connection he'd forged with Nyx was allowing him to channel her abilities, while His unwavering determination was giving her the anchor she'd never had. 7 years ago, she saved my life by changing my destiny, Caspian said, his voice carrying absolute conviction. Today, I'm returning the favor. The battle that followed was unlike anything Millbrook had ever seen. Morrigan and his companions wielded shadow and ice, their attacks designed to separate and isolate their targets. But every time they struck at one, the other was there not just physically, but spiritually, sharing the burden of each blow. Nyx danced between the dark spells, her phoenix flames cutting through shadow like they were made of paper. Where she moved, flowers bloomed in the dust and broken windows repaired themselves. The darkness that had clung to her for 3 years was burning away, replaced by something radiant and fierce. Caspian fought with the methodical precision of a seasoned soldier. But now every strike carried supernatural force. When one of the Covenant members tried to flank Nyx, Caspian's thrown knife took him in the shoulder and the blade burned with silver fire all the way through. "This is impossible," Morgan shrieked, his composure finally cracking. "The binding should hold. You belong to us." "I belong to myself," Nyx replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made the very air ring. "I always have. You just made me forget for a while." She extended her free hand toward Morgan, and this time the power that erupted from her palm wasn't destructive, it was revelatory. Silver light washed over the Covenant leader, and suddenly everyone in the square could see him as he truly was. The handsome, otherworldly features melted away like wax, revealing something ancient and twisted beneath. His skin was gray as old bone, covered in scars that spelled out blasphemous words in languages that predated civilization. His eyes were holes in reality, showing glimpses of realms where sanity went to die. "You see?" Nyx called to the cowering townspeople. "This is what they really are. This is what they wanted to turn me into." Morriganor, the thing wearing his name, let out a sound that was part scream, part prayer to gods that should never be invoked. "You don't understand what you're destroying. The Covenant maintains the balance. Without us, chaos will without. You people will be free to choose their own destinies," Caspian interrupted. He looked at Nyx, and she nodded. Together they raised their joined hands. The silver fire that erupted from their connection was blinding. It washed over Morrigan and his remaining companions like a cleansing tide, burning away centuries of accumulated evil. When the light faded, all that remained were 5 piles of ash scattered across the town square. Nyx swayed on her feet, suddenly exhausted. The phoenix flames around her tattoo flickered and went out, leaving only the original. Raven design, but somehow it looked different now. Peaceful. Free. "Is it over?" she whispered. Caspian caught her as she stumbled, pulling her against his chest. The immediate threat. Yes, but Morgan mentioned scattered resistance. Children who need to be born. "I think our real work is just beginning." She looked up at him, and for the first time in years, her amber eyes held hope instead of storm clouds. "Our work? If you'll have me? I told you 7 years ago that you'd saved my life. What I didn't tell you was that you'd also stolen my heart." He cupped her face gently. "I love you, Nyx, Seraphina, whoever you choose to be. I love all of you." Tears cut clean tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "I love you too." Of a monster, and they kissed. Silver fire bloomed around them one more time. Not fierce and battle-ready, but warm and gentle. In that light, the remaining townspeople saw something that gave them hope. To people who'd found each other across impossible odds, who'd chosen love over fear, light over darkness. The sheriff finally holstered his gun and approached them cautiously. "So," he said, looking at the 5 piles of ash, "I don't suppose you two would be interested in staying in Millbrook. We could use folks who know how to handle ... unusual problems." Nyx and Caspian looked at each other and smiled. 3 months later, Millbrook had become the strangest town in 3 states, and the safest. Word had spread along the supernatural underground about the couple, who'd broken a centuries-old binding and turned a cursed girl into something like a guardian angel. Nyx stood in the garden behind their small house, her hands buried in rich soil, as she coaxed vegetables to grow with impossible speed and vitality. The raven tattoo had changed again, now incorporating phoenix feathers and silver flames that seemed to move independently of her skin. She'd learned to embrace both aspects of her nature, the darkness that gave her visions, and the light that let her choose what to do with them. The Henderson's baby has the sight, she told Caspian as he approached with 2 cups of coffee. I can see it in his aura. We'll need to start teaching his parents how to protect him before he's old enough to draw the wrong kind of attention. Caspian set her cup on the garden fence and wrapped his arms around her from behind. How many does that make now? 15 families in the past month alone? She leaned back against his solid warmth. Word is spreading faster than we expected. People are seeking us out. They'd established Millbrook as a sanctuary of sorts of place, where those touched by the supernatural could find refuge and guidance. Nyx taught children how to control their gifts instead of being consumed by them, while Caspian used his military experience to train adults in more practical forms of protection. Any word from the scouts? Nyx asked. Marcus sent a telegram this morning. He found another Covenant cell operating out of a mining town in Colorado. Smaller than Morgan's group, but they've got their claws into the local government. Caspian's jaw tightened. They're using child laborers for their rituals. Nyx's eyes flashed with silver fire. Even after 3 months of peace, mention of the Covenant could still ignite her protective fury. How many children? At least a dozen, maybe more? She turned in his arms, studying his face. You want to go after them? It wasn't a question. One of the gifts their bond had given them was the ability to read each other's emotions with startling clarity. She could feel his righteous anger burning like a steady flame, tempered by hard-earned patience. We can't save everyone from here, Caspian said. And every day we wait, more children suffer. Nyx nodded slowly. I know. I can see glimpses of what they're enduring. She touched his cheek. But are you sure you're ready to leave this? We've built something good here. We've built something that can survive without us for a while. Mrs. Patterson has been practicing her herb lore with remarkable success, and young Tommy Morrison is showing real promise with protective wards. Caspian caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. Besides, what's the point of having these abilities if we don't use them to help people who can't help themselves? Nyx smiled at the echo of her own thoughts. When do we leave? Marcus expects the Covenant to move their operation within the week. If we leave tomorrow, we can intercept them before they relocate. He paused. Unless you've seen something that suggests we shouldn't go? She closed her eyes, letting her enhanced senses reach out across time and possibility. The visions came easier now, less like violent intrusions and more like consulting a vast, complex map. She could see threads of probability stretching out from their current moment, showing her dozens of potential futures. I see danger, she said finally, but also hope. There's a girl among the captives, maybe 13 years old, with silver hair and eyes like starlight. She's powerful, Caspian. More powerful than I am. If the Covenant completes their ritual with her. ... They won't. His voice carried absolute certainty. We won't let them. Nyx opened her eyes and found him watching her with the same unwavering faith he'd shown the day he bought her freedom. It still amazed her sometimes how completely he trusted her, not just her visions, but her judgment, her strength, her heart. There's something else, she said softly, like something I've been seeing in the far distant futures. A child with your eyes and my gift, leading others like us in a war against forces that make the Covenant look like schoolyard bullies. Caspian went very still. Our child? Possibly. The visions aren't clear on timing, and the future isn't fixed. But she placed her hand on her still flat stomach. I think we should know before we ride into danger again. Understanding dawned in his gray eyes, followed immediately by a fierce protectiveness that took her breath away. Nyx, are you saying? I'm saying I'm a week late, and my body feels different in ways I can't quite explain. And I'm saying that if I'm right, our child is going to need both parents to survive what's coming. Caspian lifted her off her feet and spun her around, his laughter echoing across their small garden. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. A baby, he whispered as if testing the word. Maybe Nyx cautioned, though her own smile was radiant. It's too early to be certain, and we'll be extra careful in Colorado. No unnecessary risks. He cupped her face in his hands. Promise me, Nix, whatever we face out there, we come home together. She stood on her toes and kissed him, pouring all her love and hope and determination into the contact. When they broke apart, silver fire was dancing in her eyes. Together, she promised, always together. As if summoned by their renewed vows, a phoenix made of pure light materialized in the air above them. Its wings spread in blessing before it dissolved. Into sparks that settled onto their skin like benediction, they would face whatever darkness awaited them in Colorado. They would face it as they'd faced everything else, united, unbreakable, and burning with the kind of love that could transform curses into gifts. The mining town of Copper Falls huddled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Even from 3 miles away, Nix could feel the wrongness seeping from its buildings, a spiritual rot that made her raven tattoo itch with restless energy. The children are in the mine, she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. Been tracking the Covenant cell for 2 days? Following trails of corrupted energy and whispered testimonies from survivors of previous raids, deep underground, in chambers they've carved specifically for their rituals. Caspian studied the town through his field glasses, noting guard positions and patrol patterns with professional detachment. How many Covenant members? 8 active. Practitioners, maybe twice that many thralls and converts. Nix's enhanced senses painted detailed pictures of the spiritual landscape below. But there's something else, Caspian. Something that doesn't feel human. The silver-haired girl.
No.
She's still alive, still fighting, though barely. Nix's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach, where the first subtle signs of pregnancy were beginning to manifest. This is something older, something they've summoned or awakened. Their plan was elegant in its simplicity, cause enough chaos. To draw the Covenant members away from their captives, then extract the children while the cultists were distracted. It refined the strategy over 6 similar missions. Learning to work together like a single organism with 2 bodies. As sunset painted the mountains blood red, they descended toward Copper Falls. Nix went in first, her ability to become partially incorporeal, allowing her to slip past guards like a whisper of wind. She made her way to the mine entrance where the spiritual corruption was so thick it felt like walking through molasses. The silver fire that lived in her tattoo now blazed constantly. Keeping the darkness at bay, the mine's upper levels were empty except for abandoned equipment and the lingering echoes of human misery. But as she descended deeper, following passages that had been carved by something other than human tools, she began to hear them children's voices. Raised in prayer or defiance, the ritual chamber was a blasphemy carved into living rock. Symbols that hurt to look at had been etched into every surface. And in the center of it all stood an altar stained with substances that definitely weren't rust. 13 children were chained around the perimeter, their ages ranging from perhaps 8 to the silver-haired girl Nix had seen in her visions, who looked to be about 14. The girl Lyra, Nix suddenly knew with prophetic certainty, was the only one still conscious. Her star-bright eyes tracked Nix's movements with desperate hope. "Can you hear me?" Nix whispered, using a trick she'd learned to project her voice directly into another person's mind. Lyra's eyes widened. "You're her, the one from the stories. It's the raven who became a phoenix." "What stories?" "The children they took before us. The ones who didn't survive the rituals. They told us about you before they... ... Double quotes, Lyra's mental voice broke. "They said you were coming. They said you'd save us." Nix felt tears burning her eyes. "I'm going to get you out of here, all of you. But I need you to stay strong, just a little longer." Above ground, Caspian had begun his part of the operation. The first Covenant guard never knew what hit him one moment he was patrolling the mine's perimeter, the next he was unconscious and tied up in a supply shed. The second guard lasted long enough to sound an alarm before silver fire consumed his scream. Within minutes, 6 robed figures poured from various buildings around the town, their faces hidden but their fury palpable. They moved with inhuman coordination, like parts of a single malevolent organism. "Where is she?" their leader demanded, his voice carrying harmonics that made windows crack. Where is the false phoenix? Caspian stepped into the open, his hands wreathed in borrowed silver flame. Right here, waiting for you. The battle was fierce but brief. 3 months of constant practice had honed Caspian's supernatural abilities to a razor's edge. He fought like a force of nature, every movement precise and devastating. When the last Covenant member fell, he was already running toward the mine. In the ritual chamber, Nyx was facing a different kind of enemy. The thing the Covenant had summoned wasn't quite visible to normal sight. It existed partially outside reality, feeding on fear and despair. But her enhanced perception showed it clearly. A writhing mass of shadows and teeth and too many eyes. You cannot stop what has already begun, it hissed in a voice like breaking bones. The children's suffering has been consecrated. Their power is already flowing into the ritual, and I'll just have to unconsecrate it, Nyx replied grimly. The exorcism 4, that's what it was, really required her to open herself completely to the spiritual realm. Silver fire poured from every inch of her skin as she became a living conduit for purification. The demon shrieked and clawed at her, couldn't maintain its grip in the face of such radiant faith. When Caspian arrived with bolt cutters for the children's chains, he found Nyx unconscious on the altar, her tattoo blazing like a beacon. The children were free, the demon was banished, and something new had awakened in the growing life she carried. Nyx. He gathered her in his arms, pouring his own strength into their bond. Come back to me. Her amber eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking his face. The baby, she whispered. Still there, still safe. He helped her sit up carefully. I can feel ... something different. Stronger. Lyra approached them cautiously, her silver hair catching the light from Nyx's tattoo. The ritual was meant to steal our gifts and pour them into something evil. But when you broke it, she touched her own forehead, where a small phoenix mark had appeared. I think we might have absorbed some of your light instead. Looking around the chamber, Nyx saw that every rescued child now bore some variation of the phoenix symbol, not cursed like her original raven tattoo had been, but blessed, protected. We're going to need a bigger sanctuary, Caspian said wryly. Despite everything they'd been through, Nyx laughed. Good thing we're planning to build one. As they led the children toward safety, none of them noticed the small crack in the ritual. Chambers floored the faint red glow that pulsed from its depths like a sleeping heartbeat. 6 months later, New Haven stretched across 300 acres of Montana wilderness, a thriving community of the gifted and the determined. What had started as a single house in Millbrook had grown into something unprecedented, a place where supernatural children could train in safety, where adults could learn to defend themselves against otherworldly threats, and where families, touched by the mystical, could find acceptance. Nyx stood on the porch of their expanded home, one hand resting on her rounded belly as she watched Lyra lead a group of younger children through meditation exercises. The silver-haired girl had become something like a daughter to them, her own growing abilities complementing Nyx's perfectly. The Denver group wants to join us, Caspian said, emerging from their makeshift office with a stack of letters. 43 more families seeking sanctuary will make room. Nyx accepted the cup of herbal tea he offered with a grateful smile. We always do. Their son for the visions had finally clarified that detail was due in 3 months. Already, his presence was affecting both parents in subtle ways. Caspian's supernatural abilities had stabilized and strengthened, while Nyx found her prophetic dreams growing clearer and more reliable. The child would be born with gifts that surpassed them both, but also with the wisdom to use them responsibly. Any word from the scouts? Nyx asked. 3 more Covenant cells identified and neutralized. Marcus thinks we've broken their back at least in this region. Caspian's expression grew serious. But there's something else. Something bigger. He handed her a telegram that had arrived that morning. As Nyx read, her amber eyes widened with a mixture of hope and trepidation. They want to meet with us? The Council of Sanctuaries? 7 cities? Nyx? 7 communities like ours? Scattered across the continent. It's all founded by people who escaped supernatural persecution, all working toward the same goal. Caspian sat beside her on the porch swing. They're proposing an alliance. Formal cooperation, shared resources.